Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. I've just recorded this entire video and the mic wasn't functioning properly, so I'm doing it again, and I would have been well ahead of the game, and I'm ahead of the game because I've got a neurologist appointment that's going to go through my MRI scan for my multiple sclerosis. It's a really important day for me. This is like the most important day of the year because I find out whether my MS is progressing or not. Looking at MRI scans, I had stem cell therapy back in 2019 in Moscow of all places, and fingers crossed things are pretty stable at the moment because I have progressive multiple sclerosis, which sucks. So I basically get worse until I die, so the stem cell therapy has stabilized that, and I'll be finding out today. Now that will affect my output. You would have a video already had I not been such a muppet. Anyway, we'll go straight to the Ukrainian general staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply. You can find them in the description to this video. So we are seeing fewer pieces of equipment blown up and damaged. We are seeing fewer personnel being attrited, and I think we are seeing a change of behavior in both the Russians and the Ukrainians as a result of the 17th of March, the presidential elections being gone. Right? I think the Russians were desperately trying to take land and have some big successes on a battlefield in order for Putin to be able to celebrate those successes. They didn't really come. Avdiivka happened a little bit too early for him to shout so much about, although that was the one kind of feather to his cap, I guess. But nothing really else has emerged, just some creeping, grinding, attritional gains in a number of places that are hard to sell to the general public. They come at a huge cost, and they are just fields here and the edge of Novomykhailivka and the edge of Krasnohorivka. Just can't really sell that. And so I think the Russians have probably stepped back a little bit, and we are seeing a sort of culmination along the front lines. At the same time, the Ukrainians were really hitting oil refineries with their drones, I think, in the run-up to the election as a dampener for Putin's electoral success. And since that's happened, since the elections have been sort of going on and finished, the Ukrainians kind of stepped back. Two nights of much quieter activity. They did strike at Engels airfield. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I think seeing these numbers tells you that story. 700 personnel lost is at the lower end of the recent scale, but still above average. 9 tanks is probably relatively more significant than the 9 armoured personnel vehicles and the 16 artillery systems, because there are fewer tanks, and I think 9 tanks there for those 3 stats is probably the better stat, but still 16 artillery systems is about average. 7 vehicles and fuel tanks is very low in that category, and 3 pieces of special equipment. Likewise, somewhat lower than we have seen. Andrew Perpetua's stats that he collects, and by the way, in his live stream last night, he's appealing for help. He has a very small team and he does an awful lot of work, and he really needs help with logging news overnight, also looking at different videos. You see here where it says 19 to 27 seconds FPV drones, 48 to 103 FPV drone, 15 seconds Baba Yaga. So it needs people to go through videos and just log what's happening in each video and then put that in spreadsheets. There's so much data logging going on with what Andrew does, but he's exhausting himself and really needs help. So if you are working from home, have time on your hands, if you're you're disabled in some way, like myself, unable to go out and do active work, and you've got time on your hands for those reasons, or I don't know, or you just would really like to help, reach out to him. He would definitely appreciate that. Anyway, we'll look at the stats here, and it looks like a 4, maybe 5 to 1 loss ratio of Russian to Ukrainian losses, which is exactly what the Ukrainians need. It's in their favour. 2 boats sunk. I don't know what boats they are. We're going to talk about boats quite a bit for the rest of the video. I presume those are smaller boats on the Dnipro River or something, because he would otherwise say there are some more significant hits to Ukrainian boats, as we'll see. BM-21 Grads, that's a multiple launch rocket system. Couple of T-72 tanks, a Bradley that's badly damaged and then abandoned, so that's going to hurt a little bit. and then a few bits and pieces. With the Russians, we have surveillance and comms, some artillery, some tanks, mainly T-72s, a range of infantry fighting vehicles, a full range air BMP 1s, 2s, 3s, BMDs, BTRs, all of these letters, just a range of infantry fighting vehicles, a couple of APCs and some trucks and civilian vehicles. But it's the mass of these that add up to a value that's really going to hurt the Russians. The Ukrainians, it depends on what those boats are. Otherwise, not too much to be worried about. Multiple launch rocket systems, quite rare for the Ukrainians to lose, but there is that one on there too. Now, take this with a massive pinch of salt. I've not seen this reported in many places, but yesterday there was a claim that a Russian Su-24 disappeared off the radar at midday yesterday near Snake Island, so on the way to Odessa to release some missiles. Odessa seems to be one of the main targets at the moment. Difficult to hide from the radar over the sea. Therefore, it's very likely that this was its last flight as it disappeared off the radar. So it could be a Su-24M that has been shot down or has disappeared for some reason. Who knows? And who knows whether we will ever know. Right. There has been an Island-class ship that's... Brilliant. Island-class ship that has been damaged by a Lancet drone. You can see the Lancet there in the video. It seems to explode just above the ship, and I think, as you can see, it's sort of airburst. I think that is because the Lancet's probably not going to puncture the hull, and if it can explode above it, then it can destroy or damage some of the highly sensitive equipment on top. So that's probably what it was aiming to do. That would mean that the integrity of the boat's probably not been too badly damaged, but it is an issue. There are 4 of these that have been given to Ukraine from the US. One of them was sunk in 2022 along with its crew, but this has taken place. What's slightly worrying about this is it's at Mykolaiv on the river, on the Bug River. So you've got Kherson here, you've got Dnipro River that comes down, and then in the Dnipro River estuary, you also have another estuary feeding into that area called, and this is the Bug River, and up there you've got Mykolaiv, and the Lancet was this boat was it's on a river, it's not in the sea. You can see the river bank in some of these in part of the river, part of this video. There it is. So this is somewhere around here, and that a Lancet can get through. I mean, we've seen Lancets get through and take out MiGs, I think, on these aprons on I'm sure it's that air base that we saw that previously some time ago. And so the Russians are still able to get Lancets all the way through to here. I mean, it's not that it's so far away, because it's not a huge distance from the Russian front lines, but it's just that this is a highly kind of sensitive area, and it's a real challenge for the Ukrainians if they're still able to lose expensive items to Russian Lancet drones being used in the area. Then there was this, I'm no expert, says war vehicle tracker in ships, but this could well be a Ukrainian naval P-262, a Matka class missile boat, which got its P-15 Termit missiles removed and replaced with R-360 Neptunes. And this appears to be hit. I don't know where that is, but it is being followed out into the sea and then hit with something, but the explosion doesn't happen on it, rather next to it, which is, I think, significant. I wonder how much damage it took since the Lancet hit the water. So someone else saying, I'm not really sure that it is that. Very difficult to draw any conclusions, but I want to say it's not. And from looking at what they can see from the video and also from schematics of the ship or the boat, and again, someone else saying, not too sure, looks a bit narrow. I don't know, to be honest, but it is likely a Ukrainian ship than a Russian one. I don't know if something that size is a ship or a boat. This missile boat, we'll call it a boat. So something that looks rather like that could have been damaged as well. So possibly a bad day at the maritime office for the Ukrainians. But I don't think they're the ones that were on Andrew Perpetua's loss sheet. He did talk about the former one here on his live video last night. So he is aware of it, and he's geolocated it up to that Bug River area. Right. Bit of Russia on fire. It's another construction site going up in flames. Another big build, fairly sizable building, taking one for the team, I guess. This happens so frequently that it's got to hurt the Russians. I don't know whether it's going to be insurance jobs or what's going on here, but construction sites seem they seem to be regularly going up in flames. Right. Talking about going up in flames, we've had oil and gas facilities being hit routinely for the last few weeks by Ukrainian drones. Now, I've talked about this dropping off since the elections taken place. I'll be interested to see whether it picks up again going forward this week. But they have lost anywhere, I mean, some people saying 11%, some people saying 14%, some people saying 17% of their refining capacity. Some people saying 400,000 barrels per day. I think Bloomberg reported 900,000 barrels per day. And so there's a great range about how much this has affected the Russians. Suffice to say that it's affected them quite a lot. And there's talk here about, well, the Russians are claiming we're working together to ensure the protection of facilities and install appropriate protection systems such as a Pantsir. According to Artem Verkov, there's been this talk about it being private entities, private companies, and so therefore, it's not up to the Russian government to do X, Y, and Z, and then that could be a permission for the Russian government to take control more formally of these facilities, a way of getting on a more nationalized war footing. I don't know, all these kind of rumors flying around. But the point here is that we go back to the blanket too small for the bed analogy, is that if they pull air defense systems to one area, then it's going to leave holes in other areas, as is mentioned in some of these analyses. I've actually closed the one I had open earlier when I first did the video, but there was another one here that talked about this being a bit of a challenge. Let's see if I have it. I'm sure it's this one. Obviously not. No, it's not. Dang. Anyway, as the Ukrainians attack these different these different facilities, then the Russians have to decide whether they protect them or whether they don't. And this is providing a dilemma. All right, you don't want to provide problems for the enemy. You want to provide dilemmas. Problems have solutions. Dilemmas have least worst, not really a solution. Okay, so if we're going to protect the facilities here, where we drawing those air defense systems from? Is it from the front line? Is it from another facility that then is not protected, and then the Ukrainians will start hitting that? So last night we saw the Engels air base getting hit, and that's in Saratov, which is over here, not crazy far from the Ukrainian border. And this is where the Engels air base, I think it might be this one there. There's Engels 2, though, isn't there? There's an air base there. So one of those two was hit. That's Engels, so it's probably going to be this one here. Was struck last night, and that is the Ukrainians returning to try and hit an airbase where the strategic bombers take off and they drop those big missiles into Ukraine. It could be a case of the Ukrainians like moving their targets to different things to keep the Russians guessing, so that then they pile all their air defenses in to protect oil refineries, and the Ukrainians start hitting something else, and then they've got that dilemma. Okay, do we move the air defenses to protect the other things, or keep them here, because wherever we put them, the Ukrainians are going to hit somewhere else? Maybe that could well be what's going on. So Engels Air Base was targeted. There was at least one explosion, it seems, on the airbase, because there was apparently cooking off afterwards, and then other explosions in the air. So that seems like air defense might have worked. So it could be a mixed bag there, but it's probably that there was a target that was successfully hit at the airbase itself. But we may never know what the true damage done last night was. Now, the US has come out and formally admitted that the North Koreans have provided, or at least the Russians have used 10 North Korean missiles to fire into Ukrainian territory, at least. Now, recently, the Ukrainians claimed that 50 North Korean missiles have been used to attack Ukraine since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. For the US to come out and formally say that, yep, at least 10 of them have been evidenced is hugely important, because it then gives them permission to do something about that, and hopefully the South Koreans to do something more formal about that. I think a formal recognition is good. I'd like to know what they're going to do about that. Right, moving on to other bits and pieces. We're going to start with something I reported very briefly in my Frontline update. Someone called me out on it saying, hey, it's a bit speculation. I don't think you've got any good evidence to suggest this trawler in Kaliningrad was anything to do with electronic warfare or whatever. Right, this is speculation, so take it with a pinch of salt. But let's join some jigsaw pieces together here. So I don't just pull stuff out of my posterior. There are some good bits of evidence. Now, the first of all, you have a trawler exploding. How often do trawlers explode and cause fire? And also, there seem to be quite a lot of, how many staff on board? There seem to be quite a few. 7 crew members on board the trawler. Is that what you expect for something that size? I don't know. I don't know about that. Anyway, even the local authorities said, due to an extraordinary, it was a term extraordinary that they put in what took place. So it's an extraordinary event. Okay, so that's something out of the ordinary. So it's not something you would expect. Okay, this trawler had also sunk 2 years before. I'm not sure that you would salvage a sunken trawler if it's just got fishing nets on board. If it's got electronic warfare equipment on board, then you might want to get that out of the sea and then reuse it, patch it up and reuse it. So this sunk 2 years previously, was then salvaged, and then is now being used again and then blows up. Okay, so that's a bit weird. And it's Russian, and this is Kaliningrad. So just to remind you where Kaliningrad is here. Right, so this is sandwiched between the Baltics and Poland. Now, what do we know about what's happened around Kaliningrad recently? Well, here's some useful GPS interference, jamming and spoofing activity going on in the area. So this is the Black Sea. In fact, let's play this. It's a GIF. This is the Black Sea here. We have Ukraine is the whole kind of dark area, and Belarus where you can't get information on what's going on, but you can rest assured there's an awful lot of jamming. There's a lot of jamming going on down here by the Black Sea, by North Turkey and around Turkey. But look at this area. This is what we want to concentrate on. So this is Kaliningrad and the Baltic Sea around there. Massive jamming in the Baltic Sea. Now, if you're jamming in the Baltic Sea, you need a boat to jam in the Baltic Sea. Right? It's not going to be just magic jamming. So what's going on there? And is that going to be a trawler? Now, we know historically the Russians have used trawlers for espionage and other nefarious activities an awful lot. They've had espionage trawlers off the coast of Georgia in America back in the 60s. And the NATO and other nations use trawlers as well in similar ways. It's not just a Russian thing. Black Sea and so on and so forth. Anyway, this is incredibly not just possible, but plausible, right? Then when you start adding other things together, so just recently, Grant Shapps, the US Secretary of Defense, was on board an RAF plane that was jammed going both directions in that area near Kaliningrad. So major operation underway to identify the source of Russian attack that jammed signals on Grant Shapps' RAF plane. BBC reports Grant Shapps' plane GPS signal was jammed near Russia's Kaliningrad. Okay, so it was jammed going over the Baltic Sea near Kaliningrad. Well, okay, so what was operating around there? Then we had an MQ-9 Reaper drone, an expensive Reaper drone that had a, scare quotes, emergency landing. I think that means it crashed near Marislawicz. I don't know how you pronounce that, but there's my attempt. In Poland after it lost communications with the base. So, emergency US drone landing in Poland prompted by Russian GPS jamming. So this has all happened in and around the same time, right? So you've got the US losing expensive kit due to Russian jamming. You've got the UK Secretary of Defense having his plane jammed, and it's all happened in the same area. And then, just after those events took place, a trawler blows up. A trawler that would be trawling in the exact area where jamming is taking place, and a trawler that has previously been sunk and salvaged, and a trawler with possibly a couple of members of crew more than it would need if it was actually just trawling, and in extraordinary circumstances, as according to the authorities, the Kaliningrad authorities. So you add all of these things together, and I'm thinking, yeah, probably a Russian electronic warfare trawler. Now, it's speculation. I could be wrong. Of course I could be wrong, but I think it's fairly plausible, so you can grant me that, hopefully. I don't know who called me out, whether it's trollish or whether it's decent. Someone wanted to be decently sceptical. Right. The MDI has revealed the details of a new large-scale cyber attack on Russia. Quote, not only Russian state, but also private structures that pay taxes and finance war against Ukraine came under attack. The list of attack structures is on the screenshot. Well, I can't speak Russian or read it, so there you go, or Ukrainian. But that is very useful, I think, for the Ukrainians to continue doing this. We know that the Russians are very heavily involved in cyber attacking, cyber warfare. The French have recently brought this up as their hospitals have been attacked. Macron talked about this in his discussion the other night on TV. This is a major problem, cyber warfare, and it's good to see Ukraine fighting back and fighting back hard in that sector. Right. These are the most transparent elections in Russia. Just incredible. Right, okay. So it talks about the policeman and what's he doing here. Okay, let's have a look at this, because this is quite incredible. When I first watched this, I thought it was a little person walking in. It's actually someone on their knees. I watch it in a small thumbnail, but it's not a little person. It's someone on their knees, which means they are trying to get away from being spotted on some CCTV camera, except it's pointing right at them. Or trying not to be seen by the guard, because, you know, that's not obvious at all. Now, the guard then goes, knows exactly what's going on, and then leaves. Oh, I'll just go out. And then, meanwhile, she is stuffing ballots in a ballot box, and then her friend checks to see where the guard really is, going out for a quick smoko, and then comes in and joins in, and they end up stuffing loads and loads of ballots into the ballot box. One presumes for Putin here, but either way, it's just evidence that scare quotes election was not transparent. It just was not transparent. There's so much evidence of it being dodgy. You know, invisible ink being used, and all sorts of things to suggest that it you know, you've got people with guns in voting booths or voting election polling stations, going into the voting booths with people to make sure that they're doing X and not Y. And then you got Margarita Simonyan praising Putin's so-called re-election as a stunning accomplishment, and said she's eagerly awaiting for Russia to take back more Ukrainian lands. When we take back all Russian lands, she says there. I mean, if you don't know what the Russians are thinking, what they're intending, just listen to their freaking television. Go and watch the propagandists and the politicians who are effectively propagandists. Listen to what they're saying on a daily basis, and then ask yourself, is it worth doing some negotiations with these guys? What do they really want? They want they want the world to be part of the Russian Empire. So, yeah. Right, Greg Terry yesterday released a video talking about this balloon, sent me imagery of it, and I told him exactly what it was, but he released the video before I could get back to him. So we saw I reported on these last year, back in February last year. I think it's February. These are balloons. In fact, there's a decent BBC article on these when they were seen around Kyiv in February. February 2023. What are they? Well, they're big balloons, and they have contraptions that look like this. Basically, metal that has been formed in a way that would reflect radar in lots of different directions and cause. It's not that. Well, I think it's to cause confusion, but also just to pop up very obviously on radar. Then you get a number of these different targets, and then you get a real target, and it's kind of, you know, it's confusing the radar in that kind of sense. So these I'm sure someone will tell me it's false targets. So it could cause air defense to be shot up, wasting, say, a missile, a very expensive missile, on a very cheap bit of kit here. So that's what these things do. And Greg Ingenieur saw one yesterday in the northern border area in Ukraine. I don't know exactly where, but anyway, interesting stuff. It's interesting that we haven't seen that for so long, and then suddenly they're popping up again. Anyway, that's enough from me. Please like, subscribe, and share. I'll now get this one uploaded, and I'll see if I've got time to work on my second one. Take care. Speak soon.